This is my 2024 Ducati Diavel V4. And if this is the first video that you're watching of this series, you're seeing a motorcycle that is in one piece and is in hopefully good condition. But that is not where this motorcycle story began. This episode is going to be a little bit different than the previous episodes. In this episode, what I'd like to do is go over some of its quirks and features, as well as the comparisons between this model, which is the V4, and the previous models. And on top of all of that, what I like, what I don't like, some of the things that I just don't understand about this Ducati Diavel. So, like I said before, this is a 2024 Ducati Diavel V4, and not a whole lot of people know what this bike is when I tell them what it is. They look at it and it is not immediately recognized as a Ducati. The Diavel was Ducati's entry into the sporty cruiser model motorcycle that they had not done previously. They had obviously their sport bikes, the Panigales, they had their scramblers, they had a host of other motorcycles as well, but the Diavel was this entry into an untapped market that Ducati had not been in previously. Being a Ducati, they had to do Ducati things. And so the Diavel, while being more of a sportster motorcycle, more of a sit back and relax style motorcycle, is still very sporty in feel and very comfortable as a cruiser. While the old Diavels were the V-twin model engine with 1198 cc's and 1260 cc's, I believe, this model engine is within the name, a V4. It's a 90-degree V-style four-cylinder engine with 1158 cc's. Now, although the cc's are a little bit lower than the models in previous years, this engine is lighter, it's quicker, and it revs higher. It's a very cool engine. And is the model engine that you see not only in this Diavel, but also in the Panigale Super Sport series as well. Another one of the defining features of the Diavel series is the rear wheel. This rear wheel is massive at a tire size of 240 by 45, which is super wide and just a massive wheel. When you see this motorcycle from behind, one of the first things you notice is just the massive width of this rear wheel, along with a kind of ugly mudguard, unfortunately, and as we'll talk about later, some pretty cool lights. Another one of the new features and quirkiness about this motorcycle is the exhaust. You can see the four tips, the aggressive look of this exhaust, and one of the biggest differences about this V4 model is the way that this exhaust works. So unlike the old models, which is the more standard 2-to-1 exit, this model V4 has the four headers that come back to meet in this cat and then have the quad exhaust, which is what you see here. Unfortunately, what that means is for this model, none of the old exhaust systems work, and it has been very slow coming for any new types of exhausts for this motorcycle. There are less than a handful of manufacturers for aftermarket exhausts for this model, and so if you want a different sound than this here, you're kind of out of luck. Another feature of this motorcycle that is very different than previous models, which is the frame itself. This Diavel V4 is a monocoque style aluminum frame, whereas the old model Diavels were a steel trellis tube style frame. What that means is you're getting an essentially completely redesigned motorcycle from the ground up. Engine, frame, and as we'll talk about next, suspension. If you've been here a while and you've watched me rebuild this motorcycle, the suspension of this bike has been the bane of my existence. The forks were bent when I got the motorcycle. We had to ship them out to have them straightened, and just trying to dial these in has been a hassle. One of the reasons we had to go through all of that was because this V4 decided to move away from the entire history of the front suspension of all Diavels coming before it. This model uses a 50mm wide front suspension. It is one of the largest diameter suspensions that you can get for a motorcycle. It is one of the rarest sizes for front suspensions on a motorcycle, and it is nearly impossible to find these anywhere to get replacements for them. The name of the manufacturer I can never remember or pronounce, and I'll put it right here. But you can't even go to their site to purchase this front suspension. You have to go through Ducati. And something I've learned along the way is anything coming from Ducati is gonna take forever to come in. Another fun little quirk about this motorcycle is the handlebars themselves. Now you might look at these handlebars and think, what's so weird and what's so quirky about these? But if you look really closely, the handlebars actually aren't these here. If you go to Ducati's website and you look up for the Ducati V4 handlebars, you will actually get this section right here. This is the handlebar for a Ducati Diavel V4. These are called, actually I don't know what they're called. All I know is this is called a handlebar. But this, much like everything else on this motorcycle, was redesigned specifically for the Ducati Diavel V4 model. And that gets really frustrating because there were years of models that came before this. And so manufacturers had made aftermarket pieces that fit year after year after year. And all of a sudden, the V4 decides, nope, we're gonna scrap that. We're gonna redesign the entire way the handlebars work, and you're gonna have to get them bespoke from us. Very Ducati. Another fun thing about this motorcycle that is brand new is this front end look. The headlight itself is very nice. It's an LED front headlight that is very bright at night. It has a day running light. It has a lot of really neat features to it. And I will say, I do like this headlight. I do like this look. What I am not a huge fan of are these air ducts here on the side of it. And I call them air ducts because I don't know what else to call them. But to my knowledge, there is essentially zero use for them. If you were to look down them, you would just see the side of the motorcycle because air comes in and air goes out the back and hits you in the leg, which this is a cruiser motorcycle. Air's gonna hit you in the leg regardless. So beyond looks, these pretty much do nothing. Now, beyond all of those kind of funny things, there are some really, really great things about this motorcycle. One of them being the fact that this motorcycle comes with Brembo brakes front and back from the factory is really nice. You're not seeing that on every, even premium sports bike nowadays. And so the fact that it comes with the Ducati, it should be standard. It shouldn't be a question, but I'm glad they came nonetheless. One of the things that I noticed on this motorcycle when putting it back together was the throttle itself. Now these grips and this handlebar has been modified because it was in a wreck and I had to rebuild it from scratch. But one of the things that I noticed was how sloppy this handlebar was from the factory. When you put your hand on it, you could feel how loose it was. And all it took to fix that was a couple of little plastic pieces, a couple of spacers that go inside of your handlebar. So you do have to do a little bit of DIY work to take this apart and put those spacers in. But once you get those spacers in, it gets really snappy and really tight, and that's what it should be. Another quirky thing about this motorcycle is the storage of it. There is none essentially, but if you do want to put some paperwork or a couple of small things under the seat of this motorcycle, which is very standard on any motorcycle, you have to do a little work to get there. Let me show you. So to get into the rear seat of this motorcycle, you have to move the rear foot pegs. You have to use your key for a little keyhole underneath the seat. You pop this and the rear seat is gonna come off. Now you would think your work is done there, but it's not, because under that rear seat is literally nothing. Now I say nothing, but I don't really mean nothing because there's a little knob right here, which if you pull up, will release the rear handle for this motorcycle, which is a little neat, but you have to use your key to unlock the back seat, pull this up to get this out if you want your passenger to have anything to hold onto, which is very weird. And now that the passenger seat is off the motorcycle, you can go ahead and take your seat off the motorcycle, and there's nothing else you have to do, because another weird quirk about this bike is there's nothing holding the seat down but the back seat. So it literally just lifts off the bike. It's held on by a little peg here in the back, which slots into a hole, and two slots here in the front, which grab onto the tank of the motorcycle here. And that's all that's holding this seat onto the bike. And you can feel that a little bit while riding. But now you can get to the storage of the bike. This is the storage, barely enough for a little piece of paper that can hold onto your registration. And then when putting everything back in the motorcycle, all you have to do is make sure your slots are all lined up. There you go. Make sure your slots are lined up. Make sure this back peg fits into the hole back here. Good to go. Take your rear seat. Make sure that the little grab here slides into its slot, which is, again, easier said than done. Get a good click, and you're golden. Your seat, firmly fastened. Rear seat, not so firmly, but it's fastened, technically. One of the things that I hated about this motorcycle right when I got it was the keyless ignition. And I thought it would be kind of a neat thing. I love the idea of a push to start button for the motorcycle because that's really easy. You can get to it very easily. Gloves on, gloves off, not a big deal. But with this motorcycle is a twist to start ignition style, which to me kind of defeats the point of having a keyless start. With a key, you're twisting to start it. You can reach in with the key, twist it to start the motorcycle. But here you have a key fob, which you always have to have on you, and then a twist to start on the motorcycle. Just let me put the key in, if this is what you're gonna make me do. Now, with that being said, this twist to start, you can actually bypass very easily, and you almost never have to engage with it by using this button here, right next to the throttle. You press this button with the key fob somewhere within 5 feet of the motorcycle, and the motorcycle should turn on for you. Don't have to press that. So you turn the motorcycle on, use ignition to turn over the motorcycle to get it running, and you're golden. I don't know why you need this, and I don't know why they have it like that. Now that we have kind of thoroughly gone over the motorcycle in its history and a little bit more about it, we can go over something that is a little bit more near and dear to my heart, which is this dash. The dash isn't normally something you would go very much into details on when going over a bike. Usually you just talk about how it's in a TFT display, it's new, it's improved than the old dial system. But for me, the dash is really important. So a little bit of background from me, my job is a UX or a user experience designer, and in-vehicle or motorcycle dashboard design is a huge passion of mine and a real thorn in my flesh. And as we get into it, I'll tell you why. The display on the motorcycle is very different than that of a car in that it needs to be very glanceable. You need to be able to be riding, glance down very quickly, see the information that you need, and look back up at the road and keep driving. One, because on a motorcycle, you're moving very quickly. There is not a lot of protection, if any protection, besides the gear that you're wearing. And every limb on your body is being used in most cases. You have both hands being utilized for multiple uses: clutch, brake, throttle, steering. You have both legs being used for braking, for shifting, and again, for steering, for counterbalancing. And so your whole body is being used to drive this motorcycle at any given time. Navigating the screen while driving is and should be a no-go. Everything should be done at a complete stop. I would think that with higher end motorcycles, navigating and utilizing this display should be very easy, very simple, very intuitive, but unfortunately it's just not. And we can look into that. So now that we've talked about what I believe should be the case with all motorcycles, let's go ahead and dive into the screen and see how to navigate it and some of the quirky features of it and the frustrations that I found. All right, like we discussed before, you can turn on the motorcycle by using the ignition switch here below the display, or you can also use over here on your right toggle, the button all the way to the bottom that has the lock to tap and turn on the motorcycle. So on this display, you can see a number of things. And one of the things that I do like is how glanceable it is for the key information that we're looking for as we're driving. So first of all, you can see here we are in neutral right now. You can see what gear you're in very, very prominently on this display. The tachometer is going to show you as you drive, and it's one of the biggest things on the screen. And I really enjoy that because as you're riding a motorcycle, that tach is going to be your key indicator of how the motorcycle is running, what gear you should be in, and all of that. The speed over here on the left is also very prominently displayed, which is fantastic. And so the two biggest things on this bike are going to be the gear you're in and the speed you're in. And then secondary to that is your tachometer. And then you would see the tertiary, or the third on the rung of hierarchy information. You have other information such as how much gas you have left, phone connection, you have your settings menu, trip menu, and then information about the outside air temperature, if your daytime running lights are on automatically, all of that information. Even more so below that, you have the Ducati traction control, the Ducati wheelie control, the ABS, and so on and so forth. And then as well, you can see your engine temperature below that. Now, one of the things that I don't like about this motorcycle is how to navigate this screen. And so right away, you see over here on the side, the arrows indicating up and down. And if you start to play with this, what you'll start to see is here on this TFT display, it's gonna do a running toggle through phone, settings menu, lap, and music, and then you're cycling through again. Now, to get into any one of these, you have to know a little bit more about navigating using these buttons. So to enter into any one of these, let's try our settings menu. Instead of an up and down, you're gonna use this toggle switch, the inner section here, and press in to enter into this riding mode. But it is frustrating that up and down has arrows, and to go in, you just kind of have to know. Now, once you're in here, you can again use the up and down arrows to toggle through this menu, going through the settings of the motorcycle. So you can go through everything from date and time, tire calibration, Bluetooth, turns, everything is in here. Now, we use the inside of this toggle switch to enter in to your settings. To get back out, logically you might think, okay, there should be an out section to this toggle switch over here, but there's not. There is an exit, and you have to use the inner part of this toggle to select the exit to go back. Another interesting thing about this motorcycle is how to navigate inside the menu from menu to menu. And I'll show you what that looks like here. So what I mean by menu to menu is you have this menu here, and then below here you'll see another menu, and then a hidden menu, which is this over here, which is gonna be your riding modes. Now, to get to all of those, it's a little bit interesting. And again, we're back to the switches over here. We have the up and the down. If you want to move to a different menu and navigate the menu within the screen, you have to tap down and hold it to get to that menu. And now that you're in this menu, you can go ahead and use this to toggle through the new menu that you're in. Now, unless you're reading your manual when you get this bike, or somebody is going through it on how to navigate this, it is not just intuitive with the buttons at your disposal. Now, how do we get to the riding modes? If we were to go back and hold the up button to get back to that main menu and go into settings, we can actually see riding modes here, but this is not how you choose your riding mode. This is how you see all the details of your riding modes. So how do we get to this screen over here? We have to use the inside enter button, hold that down, and then it will go into the choosing of your riding mode screen. So you're able to cycle through here, choose whatever riding mode you want to be in, and go from there. I am not a huge fan of using buttons that don't make a lot of sense. Yes, you can see on these buttons, you have an up and down arrow. You have mode enter, which makes a little bit of sense, but it's also not as intuitive if they had just put in an arrow going in. I do think the screen is beautiful. I do think the screen is well laid out. I just wish navigating it was a bit easier. I am nitpicking this motorcycle for sure. I'm nitpicking this display, but knowing that this is a high-end $30,000 motorcycle is a little odd to me that they would spend hundreds of man-hours on getting the display just right, but then navigating it was not on their priority list, was not on their to-do list. It kind of blows my mind a little bit. It seems to me that they're putting in more cost savings on utilizing the same buttons across motorcycles, and yet they have redesigned everything on this. Everything in this is bespoke to this model bike. So if they're gonna do that for everything else, do it as well for the buttons and the dash. For everybody here who has followed along so far and is here at the end of this video, I really appreciate it. I know that this video is a little different than what we've seen so far with me rebuilding this motorcycle, but as this motorcycle isn't technically here in the garage right now, it's being looked at Ducati to see if all the fixes we've done so far are good to go and we get the green light. Going over a little bit more about this motorcycle, I thought was a good change of pace and something near and dear to my heart, especially the display. So for that, I thank you. Thank you so much for sticking around. If you haven't subscribed to the channel just yet, make sure to do that. I really appreciate it. Drop me a like, leave a comment in the comment section. If it's just an opinion, I'd love to fight with you about it. So again, thank you so much to everybody who has stuck around and for all of your kind comments so far. We'll see you next time, hopefully with good news about this motorcycle. Until then, goodbye. Ian models, oh boy, wind. Oh. Got it.